This feature is powered by Digicel. Digicel, better together.
Before the Spanish, before the British, and long before any of us, there were the indigenous first people, known historically as Amerindians. Being the first people to settle here, they made their homes around various parts of the islands. This was well before 1498. And we all know what happened that year. Yes, Columbus. But after he claimed the island in the name of the Spanish crown, making Trinidad Spanish property, persons from Spain started coming to Trinidad. Their main goal? To find El Dorado, which they believed to be somewhere in South America. For a few Spanish natives though, Trinidad and other territories were ideal places to go to convert the hedonistic natives to Catholicism. So in 1757, some Capuchin priests settled in Trinidad, setting up a mission in Arima, making it one of the earliest settlements in Trinidad's history. They built a church there, which was dedicated to Rosa de Lima, the first saint of the Americas. Arima, which means water in the native Amerindian tongue, was originally set up on the banks of the Arima River. Yes, the first people were well known for their agricultural prowess. And in 1785, Governor Jose Maria Chacon, who came to Trinidad to oversee the settlement of the French planters, their families, free people of color, and slaves during what was known as the cedula of population, moved these indigenous people to Arima. This move was because Spanish officials believed the land in Tacarigua and Aruca, where the indigenous people originally settled, was more fertile and attractive for the new settlers. This move was also very strategic for the Spanish, whose mission at the mission was to convert natives to the Catholic vision.
So let us try and see if we could make Arima just like it used to be.
At the time, a cabildo or town council ran things in Arima. So for the first time, it was being laid out properly by Manuel Sorzano. With all of these changes, the Spanish authorities didn't want to burn too many bridges and cause too much bad blood with the natives. So they laid strict rules that kept non-Amerindians out of the mission. It worked for a while, but in 1797, when the British took control of Trinidad, things changed. It wasn't until 1813, when Sir Ralph Woodford became the governor of Trinidad, that he made it his duty to preserve the Spanish laws and customs. He said that outsiders had no right in Arima. At the time, the only non-Amerindians in Arima were men who were married to indigenous women. Governor Woodford was so adamant about this that he even appointed a strong military officer as the corregidor of Arima in 1818. It was his job to keep all strangers out. Governor Woodford was a firm advocate for the indigenous people, and he would never miss a feast of Santa Rosa, which was celebrated on August 31st. After his death in 1828, the governors that followed, they had much less of an interest in preserving relations with the Amerindians. Why, you may ask? Well, one, they were Catholic converts, and the British were not really about that life. And two, Trinidad was on the verge of ending slavery, so the Brits, they had to prepare for that.
Tell me go from Komodo, tell them meet me in Arima. Waiting on Mount Pleasant and Movato.
By the 1850s, Arima was a key village in Trinidad. It was around that time in 1849 when Lord Harris was setting up wards and counties that Arima was made a ward. Some more key events to happen in Arima included the launch of the Postal Service in 1851, the same year the Postal Services came to Trinidad. Also in that year, Arima received its first ward school, established under Lord Harris's education scheme. Cocoa was the main agricultural crop, and with the growth of the industry spreading to central regions of Trinidad, planters began to fuss about needing a transportation system to get their goods to Port of Spain. So on the 31st of August, 1876, what was then known as Santa Rosa Day, Arima got their first railway line for both passengers and freight. By the end of 1881, the ward of Arima had 1,973 people. There were also 6 policemen, 58 shopkeepers, and 1,826 laborers who most likely worked on the cocoa fields. The World War in 1941 saw American forces coming to Trinidad. They would go on to set up a base south of Arima. That brought an influx of workers to Arima. By the time the war ended, there were approximately 10,000 people in Arima. After a slight dip due to people leaving after the Americans did, the 1960 census went on to show a population of 10,939. In 1970, there were 11,636 people living there, and in 1980, a total of 15,294. The latest official census in 2011 put Arima's population at 33,606. This, of course, is Arima, beyond the old mission boundary.
They say he's a traitor, posing as an Arimian, but no Arima person would be so two-faced. Just for a token, the man fell out the African race.
Arima Boys Government and Arima Girls Government schools would go on to replace the ward school in 1881. Up until that time, Arima was the most easterly town in Trinidad. Sadly, it can no longer boast of that stat, but for 100 years, it could. On August 1st, 1888, Arima was granted the status of a royal borough. It was the first and only town in the colonies that Queen Victoria had so honored. Then, in 1898, Mayor John Francis Wallen gifted the people of Arima with the Arima Dial in honor of the town's 10th year as a borough. The original dial was bought from Nice, France, and was powered by steam. On September 15, 1985, it was upgraded to accommodate the technological advancements of the 20th century. So you see, we ain't that backward. The dial remains a symbol of progress, independence, and development for the people of Arima and Trinidad and Tobago by extension.
Cleaver, Virgin and Box with the Arima crew. Hey yo, when you reach man from Malabar, from La Hoqueta, jumping to Santa Rosa.
The 1960s and 1970s would see a switch in the economy of Arima from heavily agricultural to industrial, with factories being set up on O'Meara Road. Prominent Arimians like Aldwin Roberts, the Lord Kitchener, and Holly Biturier are forever in our hearts for their contribution to Trinbagonian culture. Arima will always be the special home of the first people and a place guarded and protected by Santa Rosa de Lima as they continue to celebrate the Feast of Santa Rosa during the month of August. The prosperity that once depended on cocoa strives on without the cocoa fields as Arima continues to be a hub of commerce and culture, connecting us to the rich history of our island. There's so much to learn about the development of Trinidad and Tobago, and hopefully this episode has whet your appetite and made you hungry for more info on how places like Arima came about.
It's a daily zone, this is what I want you to know. Just let go, me man, girl, you know he's a married man. It's a daily zone, if you only hold on, me man.
This feature was powered by Digicel. Digicel, better together.